Most people do not fail because they lack intelligence. They fail because their intelligence moves without discipline. They collect information, develop opinions, speak confidently, and assume that knowledge alone gives them power. But the world does not reward uncontrolled thinking. It rewards control. It rewards restraint, timing, silence, and the ability to remain composed when everyone else rushes to react. Intelligence without discipline leaks everywhere. And when intelligence leaks, others learn how to use it against you. Watch people closely and you will see the same pattern repeating endlessly. They reveal too much too quickly. They explain their motives before anyone asks. They react instantly when provoked. They trust prematurely. They allow emotion to guide decisions in moments where distance would protect them. They feel guilt where caution should exist. They feel certainty where skepticism would be wiser. Then they act surprised when they are ignored, replaced, or quietly sidelined by someone more controlled. They blame circumstances, they blame toxic personalities, they blame betrayal or bad luck. But most of the time, none of those explanations are true. The problem is simpler and far less comfortable. Their intelligence lacks discipline. They never learned how people observe, test, and exploit those who reveal themselves too freely. There is another type of individual moving through the same environment. At first, you may not notice them. They rarely rush into conversations. They reveal little about their thinking. Their reactions are measured and unexpected. Because of that, the atmosphere around them shifts. People become cautious. They explain themselves more carefully. They hesitate before testing boundaries. These individuals do not dominate discussions, yet they control the direction of situations. They do not chase respect. They receive it quietly. Their advantage is not charisma or confidence. It is disciplined intelligence, a mind that understands when silence protects more than words, a mind that recognizes people observe behavior far more closely than they listen to explanations, a mind that understands predictability invites manipulation. The moment someone can fully map how you think, how you react, and what you want, they gain leverage over you. Predictable intelligence becomes manageable intelligence, and manageable intelligence becomes weak. Machiavelli understood this long before psychology began describing human behavior in academic terms. He did not describe how people should behave in an ideal world. He described how they actually behave in the real one. He saw that survival and influence rarely belong to the loudest or most emotional figures. They belonged to those who controlled themselves first. Self-control made them difficult to control. Dangerous intelligence is not about deceiving people or manipulating them for amusement. It is about protecting your mind from being manipulated in the first place. It is about creating internal discipline so that pressure, urgency, guilt, or flattery cannot move you against your own interest. This form of intelligence begins with containment. The first principle is simple but uncomfortable. Never allow others to see your full position too early. The moment people clearly understand what you want, how you think, or where your boundaries lie, they begin adjusting around that information. Clarity feels honest, but in many situations it becomes exposure. Exposure creates leverage, and leverage rarely benefits the person who reveals too much. Most people expose themselves constantly without noticing. They explain their decisions before anyone questions them. They clarify intentions to avoid misunderstanding. They defend their boundaries with long explanations to appear reasonable. They believe transparency protects them. It does the opposite. Once someone understands the exact logic behind your decisions, they know where pressure will work. Once they see your motivations clearly, they know which desires to manipulate. Once they observe your hesitation, they know which emotional strings to pull. Predictability becomes their advantage. Disciplined intelligence operates differently. It does not rely on deception or dramatic tactics. It relies on absence. Saying less than expected, revealing only what serves a purpose, leaving space where others instinctively fill the silence with their own assumptions. This silence shifts power quietly. Every unnecessary word you speak provides someone with data. Every explanation reveals context. Context becomes leverage. The more information someone collects about you, the easier it becomes to anticipate your behavior. When people cannot easily place you, something subtle happens. Their certainty disappears. They begin analyzing your reactions more carefully. They hesitate before pressing too hard. They become cautious because the usual signals they rely on are missing. While they are guessing, you are observing. While they react impulsively, you remain calculating. Control shifts without confrontation. Machiavelli once wrote that deception often requires nothing more than allowing others to misinterpret what they see. He understood that people frequently deceive themselves when information is incomplete. You do not need elaborate strategies to influence perception. Sometimes restraint is enough. Deliberate silence can carry more power than persuasion. This principle also protects you from emotional manipulation. Many forms of pressure rely on visible reactions. Guilt works when hesitation appears on your face. Shame works when attachment is obvious. Urgency works when desire is exposed. When your internal state remains controlled and unreadable, those tactics lose their grip. There is nothing to pull. People respect what they cannot easily access. They approach cautiously what they cannot predict. This is not authority built through aggression. It is authority built through uncertainty. At first, the practice feels unnatural. Your instincts will push you to clarify yourself, to correct misunderstandings, to defend your intentions. Those instincts come from emotional reflex, not strategic thinking. Every time you resist the urge to explain unnecessarily, discipline strengthens. Every moment you choose silence over justification, you maintain ownership of your position. Gradually, the effects accumulate. People stop probing so aggressively. They stop expecting immediate explanations. They begin interacting with you more carefully without fully understanding why. You have not become threatening. You have become contained. Contained intelligence is difficult to manipulate because it cannot be rushed or cornered. It does not leak information unintentionally. It does not reveal emotional vulnerabilities to every observer. You still speak when something matters. You still express yourself when necessary. But nothing escapes your control without purpose. Dangerous intelligence begins here, before influence, before strategy, before action. It begins with opacity. If others cannot see the full outline of your thinking, they cannot strike accurately. They swing at assumptions while you remain protected behind discipline. And discipline is the foundation of every other law that follows. Once you understand the value of concealment, the next layer of disciplined intelligence appears. Most people believe honesty requires constant transparency. They assume that being open, expressive, and emotionally visible builds trust and respect. In reality, constant openness often produces the opposite effect. The more you reveal, the easier it becomes for others to calculate around you. Information is power. Every detail about your thinking, motives, fears, and desires becomes a piece of data someone can use. When people know exactly how you operate, they begin adjusting their behavior to influence you. What appears to be harmless conversation becomes quiet surveillance. Disciplined intelligence treats information differently. Instead of distributing it freely, it treats it like currency. Currency is never thrown away carelessly. It is spent deliberately only when doing so creates advantage. This approach does not require deception, it requires restraint. You are not obligated to explain every decision you make. You are not required to reveal every plan before it unfolds. You are not responsible for satisfying everyone's curiosity about your thinking. The moment you understand that silence is a form of protection, your entire presence changes. Observe how most people communicate. They rush to fill empty space with explanations. They overshare details about their intentions. They talk themselves into vulnerability simply because silence makes them uncomfortable. But silence is not weakness. Silence is space, and space forces others to move first. When you leave gaps in conversation, people instinctively try to fill them. They reveal assumptions, they project motives, they expose their own thinking while attempting to uncover yours. While they are revealing themselves, you are collecting information. This imbalance creates quiet leverage, not through force or confrontation, but through patience. People who overshare often believe they are being authentic. In truth, they are handing over pieces of themselves to anyone willing to listen. They become readable, predictable, and easily influenced. The person who reveals little operates differently. Their words remain measured, their answers remain simple, their reactions remain controlled. This person becomes difficult to interpret, and what cannot be easily interpreted becomes powerful. When someone cannot predict your thinking, they begin adjusting their own behavior cautiously. They calculate their words more carefully. They hesitate before attempting pressure or manipulation. Authority grows in that uncertainty. Control over perception becomes one of the most valuable forms of intelligence. When people do not fully understand your limits, they treat those limits with caution. But perception control alone is incomplete without understanding others. This is where another layer of disciplined intelligence appears. Most people think empathy means emotional softness. They believe empathy requires agreement, sympathy, or emotional connection. But empathy used strategically becomes something different entirely. It becomes observation. Pragmatic empathy means studying people the way a strategist studies terrain. You examine motivations, fears, ambitions, insecurities, and habits. You observe the patterns that drive behavior beneath the surface of words. Every person operates according to internal pressures. Pride, fear, insecurity, ambition, resentment, desire for approval. These forces shape decisions long before logic enters the equation. When you ignore these forces, people appear unpredictable. Their reactions seem irrational. Their behavior seems confusing. When you observe these forces carefully, patterns emerge. A boastful comment often hides insecurity. A dismissive attitude often hides fear of being challenged. Aggression often hides a desire for recognition. Passive resistance often hides wounded pride. These signals reveal far more than the words themselves. Pragmatic empathy means understanding these motivations without becoming emotionally trapped by them. You observe the mechanism behind behavior instead of reacting to the surface expression. This creates strategic clarity. When someone opposes your idea, you do not immediately argue. You ask yourself what drives the resistance. Is it fear of risk, protection of status, lack of confidence, personal rivalry? Once you identify the real motivation, the situation becomes easier to navigate. You respond to the real issue rather than the visible argument. This does not require manipulation. It requires understanding. You can understand why someone behaves poorly without accepting that behavior. You can recognize insecurity without allowing it to disrupt your position. You can anticipate resistance without becoming frustrated by it. Emotion becomes observation, and observation becomes advantage. While others react emotionally to conflict, disciplined intelligence studies the environment calmly. You notice tone, timing, hesitation, patterns of speech, shifts in posture. These details reveal what people truly value and what they fear losing. Most individuals miss these signals entirely because their attention is consumed by defending their own position. But when your mind is not busy reacting, it becomes free to observe. This awareness creates a form of calm authority. Situations that frustrate others become predictable. Tension becomes information rather than threat. And that calmness leads to another essential principle. The most dangerous intelligence is sovereign intelligence. Most people allow external forces to control their internal state. Praise excites them. Criticism destabilizes them. Approval energizes them. Disapproval weakens them. Their mind becomes a territory constantly invaded by outside influence. When your emotional stability depends on other people, those people control you. Sovereign intelligence refuses that arrangement. It builds an internal authority that cannot be easily shaken. Praise is acknowledged but not relied upon. Criticism is evaluated logically rather than absorbed emotionally. External reactions become information rather than commands. This does not mean emotions disappear. Emotions remain valuable signals, but they do not become drivers of impulsive decisions. Anger becomes data about boundaries. Fear becomes information about risk. Desire becomes direction for ambition. Instead of controlling you, emotions become tools you examine carefully. When your internal state remains stable, manipulation loses power. Attempts to provoke you fail because reaction never arrives. Attempts to pressure you collapse because urgency does not affect your judgment. You become difficult to move, like a fortress whose gates open only by deliberate decision. Machiavelli observed that anyone who wishes to command others must first learn to command himself. Self-command creates psychological independence. Independence creates authority. A sovereign mind cannot be easily rushed, guilted, or intimidated. It observes pressure without submitting to it, and that independence becomes the foundation for every intelligent decision that follows. Once the mind becomes disciplined and sovereign, intelligence must express itself through action. Many people spend their lives inside endless discussion. They analyze ideas, debate possibilities, explain intentions, and construct arguments about what they might do someday. Words become their currency. Plans become their comfort. Yet none of it changes reality. Discussion without execution produces nothing but the illusion of progress. In the real world, results carry more authority than any explanation. You can speak with brilliance, argue with logic, and describe your vision in perfect detail. But until action converts thought into outcome, your intelligence remains theoretical. Disciplined intelligence understands this difference immediately. Words create attention. Action creates proof. Most individuals remain trapped in the cycle of explanation. They defend their ideas, convince skeptics, and seek agreement before taking steps forward. They treat approval as a prerequisite for progress. But approval rarely produces results. Execution does. When action replaces explanation, a transformation occurs. You stop wasting energy persuading people who doubt you. Instead, you direct that energy into building something visible. Every completed task, every solved problem, every achieved objective becomes evidence that requires no defense. Results end arguments. This principle simplifies life dramatically. Instead of debating whether something will work, you test it. Instead of convincing people you are capable, you demonstrate capability. Instead of protecting ideas with endless talk, you expose them to reality through action. Reality becomes the judge. When an action succeeds, its credibility becomes undeniable. When it fails, it reveals information far more valuable than speculation ever could. Failure exposes weak assumptions, flawed timing, and hidden obstacles. That feedback sharpens your judgment. People who avoid action remain trapped in theory. Their ideas never face resistance, so their understanding never deepens. Disciplined intelligence welcomes execution precisely because it replaces imagination with reality. Execution also reshapes how others perceive you. The person who consistently produces results gains a quiet gravity. People begin trusting their judgment without needing elaborate explanation. Their reputation forms through evidence rather than promises. And reputation built on results becomes extremely difficult to challenge. But disciplined intelligence also understands another uncomfortable truth. Progress requires endings. Many individuals cling to things long after those things stop serving them. They remain attached to relationships that drain them, projects that no longer move forward, habits that once helped but now hold them back. Attachment disguises itself as loyalty or patience, but often it is simply fear of letting go. The past becomes a weight they carry everywhere. Disciplined intelligence approaches endings differently. It treats commitments like investments. Every investment must eventually be evaluated. Does it still create value, or has it begun consuming resources without producing return? If something no longer moves you toward your objective, continuing it becomes expensive. Ending something is rarely comfortable. The mind naturally resists closure because closure feels like loss. But refusing to end failing situations produces a much larger loss over time. Energy, time, attention, and opportunity slowly disappear while nothing improves. The intelligent person recognizes when a situation has reached its limit. They examine it without sentimentality. Is this path still productive? Is this partnership still aligned? Is this habit still strengthening me or weakening me? When the answer becomes clear, they act decisively. Ending something does not mean failure, it means clarity. It means refusing to sacrifice the future to preserve the past. It means protecting your trajectory rather than defending your history. Machiavelli understood that success requires adaptation. Circumstances change, environments shift, alliances evolve. A rigid mind clings to yesterday's strategy even when the conditions that once made it effective have disappeared. Disciplined intelligence adapts. Sometimes adaptation requires starting something new. Other times it requires ending something old. Both require courage. When you end what no longer serves you, energy returns immediately. Mental space clears. Attention becomes available again. Focus sharpens, and focus leads to the final principle. Intelligence without focus becomes scattered. In the modern world, distractions appear everywhere. Opportunities compete for attention. Opinions, news, trends, and demands pull your mind in countless directions. Most people respond to this chaos by dividing their attention across dozens of goals. They attempt everything simultaneously and achieve very little in the process. Disciplined intelligence rejects this fragmentation. It identifies the objective that matters most and directs energy toward it relentlessly. Instead of pursuing many directions, it concentrates on the path that produces the greatest impact. Focus transforms effort. Scattered attention produces weak results because energy dissipates everywhere. Concentrated attention produces powerful results because every action reinforces the same direction. The mind becomes a laser instead of a flashlight. This level of focus requires discipline. Many opportunities will appear attractive but irrelevant to the main objective. Saying yes to everything guarantees mediocrity. Saying no protects momentum. The question guiding every decision becomes simple. Does this move me closer to my objective? If the answer is no, it disappears from your priorities. Over time, this discipline produces extraordinary momentum. While others divide their attention between countless distractions, you deepen your expertise in one direction. Progress compounds, skill increases, influence grows naturally. People often mistake this effect for talent or luck. In reality, it is the product of sustained concentration. Focus also protects your independence. When your attention remains fixed on your mission, manipulation becomes difficult. Drama loses its appeal. Gossip becomes irrelevant. External pressures fade into background noise. Your mind becomes anchored. Each day of concentrated effort builds upon the previous one. Small progress accumulates into powerful results. Gradually, your work begins to stand apart from the scattered efforts surrounding it. The world rewards that consistency. These principles together form a system of disciplined intelligence. Containment protects your thinking. Perception control protects your position. Pragmatic empathy reveals the motivations of others. Sovereign psychology stabilizes your internal world. Action transforms ideas into proof. Calculated endings remove obstacles. Focus directs energy toward meaningful results. When these principles operate together, your mind becomes extremely difficult to manipulate. External chaos loses its influence. Distraction loses its power. Pressure loses its urgency. You move deliberately rather than reactively. And deliberate movement creates outcomes that others struggle to understand. They see the results but rarely notice the discipline behind them. But you will know the truth. Controlled intelligence is not louder than uncontrolled intelligence. It is simply stronger.